welcome to another episode of Find Your Free, the podcast. I am your hostess, Rachel Voss, and this episode is lucky number 11. And I say lucky number 11 because if you are into numerology and just kind of numbers from the spiritual perspective, 11 is considered a master number. And a lot of folks, when they see like 1111, 111, just a repeated pattern of the ones, it's usually a sign that you're on the right path, that something great is coming your way. So it resonates with me that this episode is number 11. And I am also recording this on Valentine's Day, which is why I call this episode Real Love. And if you are 80s raised, 90s come of age, soon as you hear Real Love, you always think of the song from Mary J. Blige. So, but yeah. So I thought that since it was Valentine's Day, I've been thinking a lot about what I would record this week. And I figured since it was the day of love, that I'd share a little bit of the story of David's and my journey. I talk about David in just about every episode. He is my partner, my guy. And so, I thought it might be, just an opportunity to talk a little bit about our story and what I have learned about love through our experience together. And before I jump in, just want to make sure I shout out all you lovers out there. Happy Valentine's Day. And let's get into it. So David and I actually met around 1995 when I first started Temple. And so I am actually older than him just by 4 months, 3 or 4 months. I guess more like 3. But yeah, so I'm older than him by 3 months. And but he started Temple a year before I did. So he skipped a grade along his educational path. And so he started Temple University, which is where we met in Philly. Shout out to the Owls and to all the Temple fam who may be listening to this. So he started a year before me. And when I moved into the dorm, I actually moved onto a co-ed floor, much to my mother's chagrin. But yeah, and my little bit of excitement, like, oh, okay. So I moved onto a co-ed floor, and David actually lived on that floor. And when he's trying to kind of recall, he may have actually lived in the room that I moved into the year before I moved in. So he started Temple 94, I started Temple 95. So, so we lived on the same floor, not exactly like it's like two sort of hallways with like the bathroom in between, and, you could get to the bathrooms from either side and stuff like that. So I lived on one side of the bathrooms, he lived, and the other side of the bathroom was like sort of catty corner from where I was. And it's not that we interacted like a whole lot. We ran in similar social circles. We knew a lot of the same people. And so, just along the way, our paths would cross. And so that was pretty much it as far as I can remember. When I get into how we reconnected, that will make more sense. So it was pretty much just... just met, cross paths like our freshman year. I knew him. I knew his best friend. Shout out to Yunam. And so one of his best friends, I should say. So I knew the crew. Again, we had similar social circles, see each other on campus at parties, on the yard, all that good stuff. And so then you graduate, you move on into life. And when we graduated, there was no Facebook. There was no like social media network connection thing. It was just kind of like, if I recall, I think like AOL was kind of like just getting on the scene as far as like chat rooms and stuff like that. And, at the time I had maybe a Yahoo address, maybe, and like my Temple college address, right? So I graduated 99, and then fast forward all the way to 2010. So I'm in my corporate life. It is 10, 11 years, since I've graduated college, just making sure I did my math right. So life has moved on. I'm married, I'm divorced, I have a kid, I'm a single mom, like at this point, 2010, I'm like a year, out of my divorce, just doing my thing. And so, yes, I used to run, as I've mentioned in previous episodes, I used to run training and development programs for what's called a trade association in the mortgage finance industry. And so a lot of my work required me to travel, required me to be, off site, running these training programs in different locations. And so, once everything was set up and running and I got the lead trainers out, I was more of like a facilitator, like logistics, setting things up, making sure everybody had what they needed, all that type of stuff. And then we had, folks that would come in and actually teach like the mortgage finance material. So once everything was kind of like set up and running, I would sit in the back of whatever room, have my little workstation to kind of keep in touch with work emails, all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, I took some time to go on Facebook while, just needing to pass the time, right? Because I'd literally be sitting, through these trainings for like 7-8 hours a day. So sometimes I used to sit around and fuck around on Facebook like, a lot of us do on the work time. And so, yeah, so I'm on Facebook this one particular day, June 16th, 2010. And I actually run into Namdi's profile. So it's like, I don't know if I'm on somebody's page. And this is so I joined Facebook like 2008. This is like, well, people are still being, friends you may know and recommended now. But like, this was just like when people were like, it was kind of fresh and everybody was getting on and you just started connecting with like all your friends from high school and elementary school. So it's just kind of like finding more and more people. And so Nam came up like in that space. And I'm like, oh my God, it's Namdi. And so, I clicked on his pictures and I'm going through his pictures and just looking like, oh man. And so I come across this one picture and it's a picture of, ultimately ends up being David, but I'm like, I know that guy. Like, I couldn't remember his name, which is why I say like what I said earlier. To me, it was just like, I remember meeting freshman year. I remember we had the same social circles, but beyond that, it's a little fuzzy. I had a lot of fun in college. I worked hard, but I had a lot of fun. So some memories might have gotten away from me. But when I saw his picture, I was just like, I remember his face. It was just like this immediate, like, I remember his face. And my second immediate thought was like, oh, he's kind of cute. So immediately clicked out of, Nam's pictures, found, Dave's profile, clicked on his profile, going through his pictures, hit the friend request. And I have said this before and I'll say it again. I have no shame saying that I slid right on up in his DMs, right? So I'm like, hey, it's Rachel. I don't know if you remember me from Temple, blah, blah, blah. It's like, going through Nam's pictures and I saw yours and, whatever. Just kind of like dropped the message like, hit me up. Hope you remember me. So, he gets my message, we have our messaging back and forth and he, accepts the friend request and all of that. And he's just like, yeah, don't you remember? Like, I used to give you like rides, like during this one summer, there was like a summer, in Philly. I think it was the summer of 98 where, SEPTA, Philly's like public transportation system, they went on strike. It was like a big deal. Dead in the middle of a Philly summer. It was hot. Like I had this internship like way down in Center City from campus. And so it was just like a thing trying to get around the city at that time with no public transportation. So he's like, yeah, I used to give you like rides like during that summer. I would like see you, on Broad Street, give you a ride. Completely and totally did not remember that. I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, don't you remember my little, I think he said his little red car. And I'm like, I don't remember that. And it's not that David's like not a memorable guy. Like he's in my life. Obviously he is. But again, like, I was a social butterfly on campus and, like I said, had a good time. So some things I remember and some things I'm just like, oh yeah, that did happen. So he's like, oh man. But anyway, so we connected from there. Completely forgot he used to give me rides. I was embarrassed that I forgot. But anyway, we connected from there just the same. And I'm in DC. He is still in Philly at the time. He's kind of just coming out of a long-term relationship he was in. I was like in this place of like, yeah, I'm just hanging out. I was just kind of like enjoying my life, dating around, not really looking for anything too serious. And it's funny because just being all the way honest, and I'm not sharing anything here that, my love doesn't know. It's funny. I was, like I said, I was at the height of my corporate job, not really yet at the place of like being that internally miserable, and having that sense of like, I'm not on the right path. So before kind of find my free and all that stuff kicked up within myself. So I'm just enjoying. I'm enjoying the corporate life. And he was more in his musician. Like Dave is a musician. And so he was like doing his thing with that, right? And so I remember thinking like, yeah, this guy, like, he's a creative. He doesn't even like have insurance or something. It was like, and I was like, yeah, nah, no, we'll just have fun. Like, I didn't really look at it as like a long-term thing. I just thought he was cool. And we had these really cool like conversations. So, like many of us who connect through social media, we started like just with the exchange of the DMs. And then it was like, hey, here's my phone number. Give me a call sometime. But this is what it is interesting. Even though I couldn't recall, the memory of him giving me rides to campus and a couple of other memories. He's like, Rachel, you don't remember this? I'm like, Lord, I don't remember that. The funny thing is, it was before we actually had our first phone conversation, and he was, in the exchange of the DMs, just kind of like, yeah, I do music and da 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 da. So I went and looked up some of his music. And I remember the first time I was going to listen to one of his songs, and I put the headphones in, and before I hit play, I remember this feeling ran through me, like his voice. I remember his voice. He has like a raspy voice. It was just this like memory that came like out of nowhere. And as soon as I hit play, the voice that came through my headphones was the voice that I recalled. I was like, yes, I remember this voice, So I tried to tell him that, but he's like, yeah, whatever. Like, you don't remember me. It's all good. And so eventually we did get on the phone. We had phone conversations, and it was just really cool. It was like no pressure, just kind of getting to know each other, having that connection through Temple and knowing the same people and all that stuff. And probably about 3 months in, we decided like, all right, well, let's meet up in person, right? So he came to visit me in Maryland. We just spent a couple of hours just kind of connected in person. And when he left, I was like, I wouldn't mind seeing him again. So I was like totally like Johnny cool. Like it was just like, hey, cool guy, not really, pressed to date, not to date, but to make things serious. And like it was just a really good space of like enjoying myself, which coming out of the divorce a year prior was a good space for me, because prior to getting married, it was like, and I shared this a couple of episodes ago, it was just like this focus of like, I have to be married by the time I'm 30. I have to have a kid by the time I'm 30. Like I have to. And I got married by the time I was 30, and I was divorced by the time I'm 32. So I was definitely learning to pace myself and to just enjoy dating, instead of looking for a husband. And so, so we met up for the first time for 3 months, and then another 3 months passed, and then we met up again, and, eventually just kind of started hanging out a little bit more. And again, this was long distance. So once or twice a month, just kind of making time to see each other. And probably by the end of 2010, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to like this guy, but I'm being cool because I know I need to be cool, right? And because I know where he is, he's just kind of like, I'm just living my life right now, not really looking for the relationship thing. I enjoy you. And yeah, so that's what it was. But then eventually I don't know if I want to call it my emotions, my feelings, I just really started to like the guy. And I admittedly began to kind of say like, okay, we've been spending this time, like we've been hanging out, like definitely had the like, so what are we conversation. And that was the beginning of a long cycle of push and pull, right? Like me wanting him to, be my boyfriend and be this person in my life, and him really enjoying my company and enjoying the time that we're spending together, but wanting to stay true to who he is and the path he was on at that time. And eventually, we decided okay, we'll do the relationship thing. Maybe he gave in. But we did the relationship thing. And, we did it, again, long distance. He's in Philly, I'm in Maryland. And, you know, lesson number one, and again, this is not something we haven't already talked about. This is not something that I haven't shared before. It might just seem really personal, I guess, within this whole story about it being about us. So I'm not sharing anything that's like I haven't shared before. So where was I going with that? So the first lesson that I learned is in this space, this is what I was going to say, is I really put David on a pedestal. He was this really cool guy. He was following his creative pursuits. I was trying to figure out who I was like outside of this corporate job, right? So he's following his creative pursuits. He's just cool. Like, he's just a cool guy. Like, anybody knows him, he's just a cool guy. He's from Brooklyn. I thought that I've always loved like dudes from Brooklyn. I'm a Jersey girl. A lot of Jersey girls love dudes from Brooklyn. And it was just like, he just was like super special to me. And I just wanted to like support him and, be like, just his fangirl with his music and show up and do this and do that and all of that. But I also wanted him to give me this relationship and what looked like relationship. So what do I mean by that? So I say it was like, when Facebook is still growing, in my world. So we're getting into 2010, 2011. And, seeing couples sharing their relationships and, posting I'm in a relationship with, and you see couples hugging it up and doing all this and doing all that. And I'm like, well, we don't do that. And I was doing this dance. It's funny. It was a really funny dance of like, I really want to be in a relationship with you and kind of pushing that, but then also doing this dance of like trying not to push too much, right? Like, I was trying so hard just in general not to be too much girl. Like, don't be too intense. Don't be too emotional. Don't talk too much. Don't do this. Don't do that. Because it was just like, I thought, the way I looked at him was just like, he was so cool. Like, I didn't want to be anything like uncool, and I was putting myself down in my own way because I felt like, because I had this like haughty-taughty 9-to-5 corporate job, and I didn't have like the freedom that he had in his life in terms of moving around and kind of controlling his schedule and all this stuff at that time. I just felt like me kind of being this 9-to-5, I felt like it wasn't really cool, right? And so I was just really hard on myself in terms of trying to be and not to be, at the same time for him. And he would tell me that. He would say like, Rachel, don't put me on this pedestal. Don't do this. Don't do that. But, and it was just like, but I love you. You know what I mean? I want to be with you. And, I have this vision and I see you in my life and and all of that. And so eventually that burned out because it was going to, right? He told me straight up what his truth was. I don't have it for a relationship right now. And I accepted his truth, or I told him I accepted his truth. And then, along the way, I got caught up in label and relationship and why aren't you showing me? And why aren't you posting pictures of me? And all these things that were just not where he was, and eventually that is going to burn out because it's just push and pull, push and pull. And so we get to 2012 and it's like Mother's Day. Actually, I'm going to tell this story, baby. So it's Mother's Day and I know he's going to be like, oh God, but it's Mother's Day, 2012. And, we're just spending time. I'm out there visiting him, the kids with me. And my kid at that time what's that, 9 years ago? So he's like 4. He's like 4 or 5. And he's like 4. Yeah, because something happened with his 5th birthday party. So, we're there. And I think boss kind of just had like a moment, like a toddler moment, like a meltdown or I don't want to do something or something that for David was like, oh shit, like this is real. Like this woman has a kid and like I'm in her life and I wasn't trying to do all of this. And so I remember he came to me on Mother's Day and he was just like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I am with this. And that was kind of like the beginning of the end of that first round chapter, I like to say iteration of David and Rachel. So I went back to Maryland, and if you've been in a relationship before, you know, if you've ever been in a relationship that started to disintegrate and you know it's disintegrating and you know it's like this is happening, but you really don't want it to happen. So, you know, you're kind of resisting it. You're kind of doing the things to try to make it work. You know, the calls, the texts, the long emails, like maybe he'll see this, maybe he'll read that, you know, maybe not a proud moment, but it was a real moment. And I think a lot of us who have been in love and have been willing to put their heart on the line have had that experience. You know, it's like you are losing control of a situation and there's nothing we can do about that. And life teaches us that time and time again about attachment and about detachment. And when it comes to relationships and sharing space with other humans, like I remember when we first learned about attachment and yoga teacher training, it was just like, how do you not get attached to people you love? You know, your family is one thing, your friends are one thing, but it's like when this person comes into your life that doesn't necessarily have to be attached to you, you know, but you share something special with them that you don't share with anybody else. It's like, how do you not get attached to that, right? And so I was in that space of being attached. I didn't want it to come apart, but it was happening. And it all came to a head when I had the car accident that I talked about. I definitely know I probably talked about that in the first episode and probably just throughout a couple of episodes, because that car accident is what sort of prompted the journey of Find Your Free. I was out of work for 2 months as a result of that car accident. Gave me a lot of time just being at home, reflecting on my life, what I was doing. During that time is when I took yoga classes as a way to heal my body. And I learned to connect with yoga in a way that was very different and deeper than I had ever experienced before. And that was like what prompted me to want to look into yoga teacher training. But it was in that space where when the car accident happened that, you know, David had to make his final break. Like, you know, I wanted him to like come and console me. He had like a conflict with music and, you know, and so it just was kind of like, yeah, this is not happening. And so I don't want to get into all of the details. Certainly some things need to be, you know, kept for our privacy, but there was just a lot that ended up coming out of that time. And little bit of a love triangle. I will say that there was some of that going on. So just a lot, you know, that ended up happening over the course, say, between 2010 and 2017. So, you know, just some back and forth periods of time where he moved on, you know, dating somebody else. I moved on, dating somebody else. There were times where we were not dating, kind of would talk to each other, but then it was just like, this is just not, you know, so all of that. And so by 2017, here we are, you know, 7 years reconnected again from that initial moment on Facebook. And, you know, even though I had started dating other people, even got into like 1 or 2 relationships or whatever, you know, I just always felt something special for him in my heart. And so it was just, you know, when he would reach out or he would call, it would be just easy to kind of fall into that. But then we get around 2017 and we're in a space where we're separated, and I started dating somebody else. And this was like the first relationship where I was seriously invested in terms of like, okay, I'm gonna put David down. Like I gotta cut that tie. Like it's not happening. So by 2017, I had shifted from corporate to leading Rachel Voss Yoga. You know, I was now in the space of finding my free. I was now in my own creative zone, creating my schedule. And so I was kind of on that path that David was on when he and I first connected back in 2010. And I would just think like, oh man, it's just too bad. Like our paths couldn't align, it was just like right feeling, wrong time, And so I'm in this part of my life and I felt like, okay, I really got to close that chapter once and for all. And I really made this conscious choice to let it go. There was even a point, where he called me like in that space, like, hey, do you want to try again? Or, and I was just kind of like, nah, we need to move on. And so that was a powerful moment for me because I needed that moment where I could hear myself, feel myself say, no, I can't do it this time. Because all the other times it was like, yes, I'll try. And then, we'd always end up at the same kind of like impasse. And so, he moved on, I moved on, I'm dating this guy and, just thinking like, okay, this is it. This is where I am. And so, we fast forward to 2018 and, David reaches out with a phone call or email and I responded. And it was just kind of like, because it had been months and, I told myself like, okay, why is he reaching out? Like he called one time and I couldn't answer. And I waited like a couple of days and I called him back. And that did begin, some back and forth, just emails and phone calls and stuff like that. I will admit that while I took the relationship that I was in at that time very seriously, oh man, there was something that did feel like it was missing for me. See, what happened with David is like I said, I put him on a pedestal and then we had the moment where it was like, okay, I'm not putting you on the pedestal anymore. You're David, you know what I mean? And like, I have to put my own self, on a pedestal. But what David did was set a benchmark for like passion and real homie lover friend type shit, like I rock with this dude. This dude is cool. I'm attracted to him. It was on all levels. And a little bit, I didn't have that in the way that I felt like I needed or that kind of got me going. So I remember contemplating like, okay, I walked away from this corporate job to pursue my passion of being service to others, right? So am I going to take a short in the romance department, not pursuing passion? And that contemplating that really meant something to me. But the other side of it is at this point, I'm 40. I've been through a divorce. I felt like I had just kind of taken my kid through enough of mommy, trying to figure things out. And I just was just like, I'm just going to try and not just always give in to my like indulgences. You know what I mean? Like I as a Scorpio, I'm driven by passion. I'm driven by feeling and heart and, all of that good stuff. But it was just kind of like, no, the right thing to do is not give in to that. But I kept calling, or emailing or texting David. And it became this internal conflict for me because I felt like I'm a yoga teacher and I'm having like this conflict of like feeling in my heart. And, I don't know, I don't think that I'm being like honest or I'm not being righteous as a yoga teacher, being in a relationship with one person, contemplate feelings for this other guy and, all this type of stuff. And I went for all kinds of readings. Somebody tell me the answer, please, somebody tell me what to do. And so what it was is I was afraid to let go of the relationship that I was in. And it wasn't just me kind of, dealing with like the passion that for me I felt was missing. There was, stuff on this guy's side too. So, we weren't like all the way in sync, but we had like a cool relationship, and it was just like, it was there, but it was just not all the way in sync with some things. And so, but what I struggled with was like, well, I've been down this road with David before, and I've gotten hurt down that road before. And, I kind of shifted my crown a little bit, you know what I mean, to try and make things work, and I was just afraid of all of that. I was afraid of leaving something that was stable and taking a risk with, kind of what I already had experience with. But the heart, right? But the heart. So I remember I got this tarot reading. And, I found this woman on like Instagram, and I just messaged her. And something about her, what she posted, resonated with me. So she posted something about twin flames. And I was just like, all right, we set up a time, like 30-minute phone reading or whatever. And I told her, I was just like, I am in conflict. I'm in this relationship with this good guy, but I can't stop thinking about this other guy, and it's tormenting me. And so kind of she went through some questions. We talked through some things, and she's like, listen, honey, from the beginning of the phone call, when you told me you were in conflict, I was wondering, like, why are you concerned about the guy you're in the stable relationship? Your heart's with the one that you can't stop thinking about. So let the guy that you're in the stable relationship, like, let him go so he can find his person, his mate, his, situation, and honor yours. And she told me, like, at that time, from a spiritual sort of fifth dimension perspective, that we were entering a season where twin flames, if you, get into all that stuff, where twin flames were coming back together into this lifetime. It's a little different than soulmate. And I'm not going to get into all of that here. It's a little bit different than soulmate, but, twin flames are reconnecting. And she's like, and if you are fortunate to be able to reconnect with your twin flame, go for it. So ultimately, I decided to trust my heart, and I went for it. And I had the honest conversation with the guy that I was in a relationship with, kind of honest. I was just like, yeah, I just think we're on different paths. And he saw it too. So, it was totally like amicable and no love lost, nothing like that. And we went on, and I probably waited 12 hours before I called David, like, hey, so guess who's back on the market? And we went from there. And so our first real moment of reconnecting and rebuilding our relationship in this new space in 2018 was taking a trip to Mexico. We took this trip, and I didn't tell anybody except like maybe one or two people, like maybe one or two close friends, like, yeah, I'm actually going on this trip with David. But other than that, the whole world thought I was like going by myself. And so David comes down, and, we're trying to, we're using this time just sort of away off the grid to try and reconnect. And I went down to Mexico like 3 days before he came down, just to have some time for myself. And then he came down, and we had like 2 good days together before everything went left. And what went left was me eating something funky that ended up giving me severe food poisoning. I ended up in a hospital in Mexico on my last night there, had food poisoning, and just sick the whole 5-hour flight back from Mexico. That is like an awful feeling, having to fly and be in that condition. And, and I just remember thinking like, oh my God, like, first I thought, is this like a sign? Like, we get back together, and the first thing that happens is like, I get gravely sick, But then, and I was pissed because that was like my first vacation in like 5 years. But then when I stepped back and I came out of the food poisoning haze, I was like down for like a week. It was awful. Would not wish that on my worst enemy. But when I had time to reflect, I said, what was important about that was, I wasn't perfect during our first couple of iterations. So I just want to say that. But in one of those iterations, I had gotten hurt. And that was kind of what was driving the fear of like, should I give him and us another chance? But the way that he was by my side, during that time in Mexico, like by my side at the hospital, all of that, it was just like, I needed to see him be there for me, like in that way. And that helped to start to melt some of the walls or the fears, that I had inside about us moving forward together. And so eventually later that year, we went for it. We moved in together, and we decided, all right, we are starting this life together. And anybody who lives with somebody, certainly couples who are married, stuff like that, the first, 6 months or so, whatever, maybe longer than that, absolute slumber party, like night after night. I am hanging with my best friend. I live with this guy that I love. Like, yes, and then life just starts to happen. You start to see some of their habits that you didn't see when you didn't live together. They start to see some of yours, all the stuff that my little secret single ways that I would try to hide, like I couldn't hide them anymore, and, vice versa. And then if you listen to, I think it was the second episode, we start to work on a baby together, and like that has been taking its time. So, life starts to happen and the slumber party starts to come to an end. And when life started to happen is when I really started to learn about loving somebody and living with somebody and, what they say about unconditional love or real love, like what I call this episode. So when I was married the first time, yeah, I lived with my husband at the time, but it was dysfunctional and painful and a lot more difficulty than there was good days. And so it never really felt like the experience of like settling in and living with someone. And I was married so briefly that, when I was divorced and by the time I moved in with David, I was living by myself for like 10 years. And prior to getting married, I lived by myself. And I did not realize like how ingrained living by myself like was in me in terms of sharing space with somebody else. So I was just on this kick of like love and, I get to take care of him all the time and, all these different things that, the first reality or kind of like wake up moment. So like one of my secret single behaviors is like, especially as a single mom, like when I would get Voss to bed, those after Voss goes to bed hours, 8, 9 o'clock, like that was like the first moment in a day that would be like my time. And so I would veg out on the couch and have my time with Netflix and just kind of, that was my space. And it was something I had gotten used to. So, every night here, if David's going up to bed or whatever, there'd be some nights where like, I'm just like on the couch because that's what I was used to. And I remember one night he's like, "So you coming up?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I guess like I can't just be on the couch like all the time. Like I gotta go upstairs, you know what I mean? And like spend time with my man." And, it was like, all right, I'm living with somebody. And, getting 40 minutes in, I could be here forever. And I will save some things for an episode or 2 or 3 or more, where David and I have exchanges together. Like I really want to bring him on. I've talked about that. And just to kind of save some of the story for future episodes, right? Don't want to give y'all everything right away. But it has been the journey of living and loving. And I will say that to kind of get to a place where I want this to land in a certain way, what I'm talking about. I want it to all land in a certain way. So let me get to that space. So I am romantic, warm, fuzzy, water sign, Scorpio. David is earth sign, practical, grounded, romance, not his love language, right? Like I'm acts of service and he's like whatever practicality is, right? And I'm a little touchy-feely and stuff like that. And we knew this about each other coming in, you know your person. But then there would come moments where I would feel like, I need you to give me more. And he's like, well, what is more? Like, I'm here and, I'm helping with the kid and, I'm doing these things. But I'm like, no, I need more like emotionally. And, and then we'd start having new impasses that come from living together, right? Like just I'm looking for something. He feels like he's giving it. I don't feel like I'm receiving it, vice versa. And, all this type of stuff. And, you start to learn the art of like true communication, learning to really hear your partner, learning when you don't hear your partner. And, I know I'm a tough cookie, but I learned, I continue to learn that I'm a tough cookie. And I just kind of keep falling back on like, yeah, it's that time of just living by myself and raising Voss like on my own. Like it made me just kind of like, this is how I do things. And you really learn that relationships are truly about compromise and meeting each other halfway and doing the uncomfortable thing. And so this, my romance versus his practicality has been something that has come up, a couple of times. And, we've had some moments. And so, last summer, especially with the pandemic and being home together a lot, actually through David's encouragement, he's like, let's look into like getting a counselor, you know what I mean? Just so we can make sure that we're on the same page, we're communicating with each other. And interestingly enough, like me, Miss Healer, Miss Yoga Teacher, Miss I go to a therapist and all that type of stuff, I resisted that at first. I resisted it. And he was shocked. He was just like, why would you resist it? And I had to realize that it made me feel like something was wrong with us. And I didn't want anything to be wrong with us. And it was interesting because I chose individual talk therapy on my own. And I didn't approach it because I thought something was quote unquote wrong with me. I just felt like I was attracting certain energies in my life over and over and over. And I wanted to change that energy. But here I thought, oh no, that means there's something that's wrong with us. And I just was desperate to not have anything be wrong with us. But finally it was like, okay, yeah, you're right. And we found, our counselor that we have now been meeting with since July. And it's been a really great investment. And I encourage that for any couple, new couples who are just living together or, just getting married, even couples who have been on the journey for a long time, and it's really helped us realize where we still operate from wounded spaces. It's helped us realize where we've had trauma triggers. It's helped us realize where we both struggle with value a little bit. It's helped us realize like where we're holding back truth. It's just helped us realize a lot of the things that frankly need to be realized for there to be true partnership in a relationship. And, I've had my moments where I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get the hell out of here. And, I'm definitely sure he's had his moments where he's like, I'm going to get the hell out of here, right? But one of the most important things I have learned through counseling is that it's not just about what you want and it's not just about what he wants. It's about what is good for the relationship, and really thinking together and not individually. And that's kind of where we were getting tripped up. Like I was focused on what I wanted. He was focused on what he could do or what he wanted or, whatever. And when we would bump heads, it would just always be this very sort of like individualistic, just these two forces of like, this is who I am, this is how I am, and we would struggle with a little bit of give, but then it's like, you got to put that down. Like if you are in this, then you got to be in it. And yeah, you both have needs and it's important to talk about those needs and, what are your core values, needs versus wants, like really getting into all that kind of stuff. But it has to be about the relationship. And what can happen, especially over time in a long-term relationship, and especially with this pandemic, my goodness, this is different circumstances for all of us who are living together, who are married, who are sharing space together. Like, you may have like just routines, like he would go hang out with some of his buddies or, go visit family like in New York every once in a while, or I go do my thing. And it's like now all of that is shut down. So kind of like the things that would feed us individually so that we can be, who we need to be in the home together, like all of those things are shut down. So this is a very unique space of having to be like piled on top of each other all the time. And like bumping heads are not like, fortunately, going back to the beginning, I just think David's fucking cool, so I like him. And it's not difficult to be quarantined with him. It's just that when we have the moments of him being David and me being Rachel, and all that type of stuff is where, it gets a little sticky, right? So when, though, you're together and you're in your routine, especially when there's a kid or kids involved, and you're just kind of into that stuff, just like with a lot of things in life, you can start to take things for granted, right? You can take for granted that this person is in your life. You can take for granted that you've been blessed with somebody to love. You can take for granted that you're not going through this quarantine, by yourself, that you have somebody you can wear the mask with and go into the store with and share this like really funky, weird space with, right? You can forget those things, especially if you feel like your needs aren't being met, if you're having a bad day, all this type of stuff, and start to focus on what they're not doing right, what's pissing you off about them, all this type of stuff. And you kind of lose sight of the why and the fact that it's about the two of you and what you're building. And that is something I've really had to learn and that I continue to learn, to really step back and be about us. So one honest thing that has come up, and I think a lot of my women friends are feeling the same way. I like to cook, I like to cook. I do like to cook. Do I like to cook every single solitary day? No. Like in my world, I would love, like I cook a couple of nights a week. We go out to eat a couple of nights a week, like, whatever. I love to go. I do love the idea of like going out and eating out and all that type of stuff. But I don't mind cooking. But, again, with this pandemic, it's like all the time cooking, preparing snacks. I got David, I've got my son who's 13 and just eating everything out of house and home. And so it's just constantly feeling like, oh my God, I'm constantly thinking about food and cooking, and I'm at the grocery store all the time. And, just from social media posts and stuff like that, I know a lot of other women feel the same way. Like, I'm just tired of cooking, or just preparing meals or always having to think about it. And so, I've just been like kind of fussing, about that, and just kind of like, oh, I'm having to do this cooking, and like, you don't understand, and you don't understand me, and, all this type of stuff. And, and it's like, well, what do you want me to do? And you know what I mean? And so it's just created, like, has created some discord. And so I remember, it's kind of came to a head in like December. And I think I actually shared that in an episode too, where David got this reading about like our relationship, and we were kind of in a space, and then he gets this funky reading, and it was just like, oh my God, this is all going to end, and I don't want it to end. So I had to have a conversation with myself going into 2021, because this is like at the end of 2020. And I'm like, all right, I am really going to focus on nurturing myself spiritually. I had to have the honest conversation with myself of like some of what I'm kind of, constantly saying like I need from him. Like maybe it's something I need to give myself, maybe I need to give myself more time on the yoga mat, give myself more time, with a spiritual bath, and just taking time for myself. Like, let me try and nurture myself. And I made that conscious decision. I made a conscious decision like, okay, yeah, I'm tired of cooking, but you know what? I'm going to do it with love. I'm going to try and stop fussing and really just focus on doing everything in love and doing everything in peace. And when I really shifted my mind to start moving in that way, it didn't feel like so intense and so heavy and like, oh, I have to cook. Like I still had some moments where you just don't feel like it, or you're tired or whatever. But, then you begin to enjoy it even more. And it doesn't become this thing where like you're grumbling the whole time and it's not an enjoyable process. It's like, no, like I'm cooking for my family and I'm coming up with new recipes, and I'm able to take care of my guys. And this is good. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't have a brush up every once in a while. Sure we do. We're humans. Again, we're still going through this crazy pandemic time. I want what I want. He wants what he wants. And there are some days where those things just don't line up. But what I have been focused on is cherishing the little things a lot more, because I always say I'm a little things kind of girl, right? So when I am saying, David, I need you to be romantic, just please do the little things. Like, it just surprised me, show me that you are thinking about something for me that I would love for myself or whatever like that, right? So so we have that. So we have these brush-ups, right? And I want what I want. He wants what he wants. But I have really been focusing on cherishing the relationship more, doing things in love more, and really taking time to do the gratitude exercise of every night before I go to bed, take 5 minutes and just write down, what am I grateful for? And every day, maybe 1 or 2 days when I was mad at him, I didn't do it, but that's when you should write it more. And every day for the most part, I say, I'm grateful for my partner, David. I'm grateful for another day with him because, again, every day is not going to be perfect. We're going to get on each other's nerves. We're under each other all the time. But I think about people like Vanessa Bryant and how she lost Kobe Bryant. I think about all the time Lauren London and how she lost Nipsey Hussle. And it's just kind of like, what if he was just taken away from me? Like, again, coming back to attachment, detachment, like nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is guaranteed. It's like we can be so focused on like, oh, I hope they don't leave, that sometimes we don't think that life can take them away, in a way that we didn't imagine. And then what happens, right? So if I can offer anything from all of this, if you are in a relationship and you've hit a rut, or you're just in a space, or the pandemic is challenging things, I definitely encourage couples counseling if you haven't already explored that. If you are interested in a recommendation, happy to point you to the website where we found our counselor. Just connect with me on the socials, Rachel Voss Yoga on Instagram. You can find me, drop me a DM, anything like that. And yeah, I would suggest like finding a counselor, having somebody to talk to, having your own therapist, if that is possible, just so that you have somebody that you can talk to about things objectively, because as my therapist taught me, sometimes I don't have to unload everything on David. You feel like, because this is your partner and they should be able to take it all. Like sometimes it's like, no, let me just tuck this and then talk about it in a constructive kind of way so that it doesn't end up being an attack or, just something that becomes a lot for your partner to have to deal with, or it doesn't become sort of like an unnecessary argument or anything like that. So have your own therapist, somebody that you can talk to. And it's really good. I mean, family members, friends are great, but always remember they love you. And so when you come to them in tough times, when those tough times have passed on for you and you're fine with your partner, sometimes the family and friends are still holding on to the thing that you came to them about, right? And then they might not be able to move on in the way that you moved on. So when you talk to like a therapist, a counselor, just a spiritual advisor, somebody like that who is objective, that can just help you see things within yourself. And then the same thing when you do couples counseling, somebody that looks at you objectively and sees how you argue with each other, how you talk to each other. They see the things that you can't see because you're in the shit, right? So couples counseling, your own therapist, do a gratitude exercise, if not before you go to bed, maybe first thing in the morning, maybe put a reminder on your phone during the day to just like stop and pause, say thank you for this partner, tell your partner thank you, and just try and cherish the little things, especially in this space, especially when you feel like, oh my God, I'm climbing the walls if I have to see them in those sweatpants one more time, but just, hey, but they're still here. They're healthy, they're alive, we're together, we're okay. When craziness happens in the world, like we can sit on the couch together, we watch the news together, we're talking about these things together, So just focusing on the little things and finding gratitude in them. Because that's where I am. We've been living together going on 3 years now. And there's still so much I am just learning because I'm really understanding, I'm really beginning to make that shift of like, it's not just about what I want and what I need and protecting my interests. I definitely have my work and past pains, and you know what I mean? So I got a lot of layers that I didn't realize was there. And I always knew I was a tough cookie, but I definitely get on like my tough woman shit, and sometimes I gotta back down from that a little bit. So, yeah, so just remembering that if this is your person, and the heart tells you, the belly tells you, but if it is your person, your friend, your lover, your homie, your guy, your girl, whatever it is, like, and the love is real, then cherish it, show the gratitude for it, and know that when the love is real, it's going to be real love. Like, it's not always going to be perfect. It's going to be probably your greatest teacher, if not one of your greatest teachers. And not that it should always be difficult or challenging or anything like that. You may have cycles and periods of time, but there should be ease and peace and brevity and all that stuff. But yeah, just cherishing your person, being grateful for your person, and just being thankful that you have this life to spend with them, at least, this part of your life to spend with your person. Because love is real, love is real, and it's work and it's insight, but it's also beautiful, and it's a gift. And it's a gift, again, that you want to cherish and be grateful for every day, every day. So, okay, I'm going to pause it there. I feel like like I said, I could just keep going on and on, but getting on that hour mark, and I want to move into sharing the passage that I picked for today. I do hope that you are able to get something from this. It is totally my goal not to just get on this mic and just like dump the stories of my life, but to weave things together to share a gem, insight, experience, a good word. So I do hope that you got something from this. And if you're not in a relationship, no worries. Love yourself, cherish yourself, give yourself all of the things that you want to attract in your life, and so yeah, just keep loving yourself. Be grateful for the relationships you do have in your life, your friends, your family, coworkers, things like that. That really just goes across the board with anybody you love. Just always showing that gratitude, and just not taking things for granted, and giving in where you can give in, and picking and choosing your battles. It's all of that. It's all of that. So, but if it's worth it, it's worth it. So, all right, lovelies, with that, let's go ahead and find a comfortable seat. Maybe you are sitting in a chair and you want to bring your feet comfortably on the floor. Maybe you're sitting on the floor. Wherever you are, find a tall spine, soft shoulders. Maybe close the eyes if that feels good. And let's take a beautiful deep breath in. Exhale out through the mouth. Just feeling your jawline relax. Again, the shoulders soften. Maybe closing the eyes. And this passage that I'm going to share today is from Melody Beattie's Journey to the Heart, and it's called Cherish Each Moment. Stop waiting for the one moment in time that will change your life. Instead, cherish all the moments. A desert cactus that blooms briefly only once a year does not consider all the moments it is not in bloom wasted. It considers them necessary and important. It knows the rest of the year, the rest of its life, it is beautiful too. All the moments count. The quiet moments, the moments of boredom and solitude, the moments of sharing, the exciting moments of discovery, the moments of grandeur, the agonizing moments when we feel sad, angry, and upset. Each moment in time is equally important. Don't wait and hope for the one thing, the one person, the one event that will change your life, plummet you into the future and the life you desire. Instead, remember that each moment in time brings change, evolution, and transformation. Most of us relish the magnificent spiritual experiences, those tremendous discoveries, those important times of change. But those moments don't happen that often. The truth is, each moment in time is a spiritual experience, an important time of change. Cherish all your moments. Soon you will see the beauty and power of each. Let each moment have value. Let each day of your life be the spiritual experience you seek. The power to change and evolve lies within you. The life you desire is happening right now. Your destiny is here. Cherish all your moments. Embrace the beauty and importance of each one. So when I was, looking through the passages or looking through the books that I read, the passages from, I saw that and I was like, yeah, that's kind of right on point. I think I said cherish and gratitude about 25 times in the last 10 minutes. But it's true, to cherish each moment. And in this space, especially of the pandemic, where things can feel and seem and be absolutely mundane, then be grateful for the mundane. Be grateful for the breath, their breath. Be grateful for another day of being together, of the quiet moments, just be grateful. Sometimes the attitude of gratitude is all you need to get you through a space, to get you through the next day, to attract what it is that you want, so you have gratitude for what you have now, and the universe will respond with giving you so much more. So, yeah, lovelies, cherish each moment, love yourself, love the one you're with, and go check out Real Love by Mary J. Blige if you're not familiar with it. All right, lovely. So let's go ahead and formally end this episode. And I will end it with what I always end it with, which is, may you be happy, may you be free, may you be peaceful, easeful, useful, and joyful. The light in me honors the light in each of you. Thank you for joining, and I'll see you next week.